Hello and greetings from your friendly neighborhood science and history teacher. This will be a very short, promises, video on some tips for writing a good report or just writing in general. Now, you may already be aware of some of this stuff if you've had some training from Andrew Pudewa. This is some of the stuff he talks about in a lot of his curriculum, so I want to give credit to him. So, in order to try to illustrate some of the concepts that I want you to try to put into your book reports, I want to go to something that's well written and look at why is it well written. So here we are on the Answers in Genesis website, okay, and they have an article here on soft tissue that has been found in fossils. Now, of course, this is a controversial topic because the atheists and the evolutionists believe that fossils have been in the ground for millions and millions of years, and so there shouldn't be anything like, this little guy right here, which looks an awful lot like a red blood cell in a blood vessel. That kind of thing shouldn't exist, right? So the atheists have spent a lot of time trying to say, well, it's what they call a pseudo fossil. It just looks like, which do exist, by the way. Sometimes crystalline structures in rocks and erosion patterns can look like fossils, and you investigate and it's just a pseudo fossil. So that is a thing. But here, of course, we've done further testing on it, and we actually find even DNA from the dinosaurs in some of these soft tissue samples. I know what you're thinking, Jurassic Park. Turns out we have way less than 100% of the genome of a dinosaur. Which really shouldn't surprise us because, according to Young Earth Creation, these fossils have been in the ground for at least 5 or 6,000 years. So the fact that there's any soft tissue left at all is remarkable. Anyway, all that aside, let's look at the structure of some of these paragraphs and see if we can get a couple of tips on how to write a well-written report. Okay, so we say hardly a month passes without new reports of soft tissue discovered in fossils. Yes, there have been hundreds, I believe, at this point. Could this material last millions of years? We need to see what laboratory studies show us about tissue decay. Okay, so here we have a short paragraph. Okay, you really wouldn't want to go shorter than this. Okay, so make your paragraphs. Just take this as an example. You got one that's 3 sentences. You got one here that's 1, 2. Well, it's 3 again. Okay, so these are longer sentences, and so you end up getting more lines. Okay, that's a great minimum for your paragraphs. At least 3 sentences. And here we have the introductory paragraph. Okay, so he's introducing key topics, right? Lots of reports. Major question: is it possible for this to fit with an atheistic worldview? And answer to that question, we're going to look at good laboratory science that would the data that would try to help us make an informed decision about whether this should change our worldview or whether it shouldn't. Maybe soft tissue can last millions of years. I doubt it, but I haven't been I haven't been alive millions of years, so how would I know? Well, again, there are certain tests you might be able to run to inform yourself. Okay, a couple of things about the paragraph structure. Notice they did not indent. I prefer it if you indented your stuff, just use tab or whatever to indent your first paragraph. It's fine if you don't. They skip a line between paragraphs. That does make it more readable, guys. It's probably irrelevant to you, but a lot of old people don't see as well as they used to. A lot of people don't have your reading level. That's important to realize. So if you can make it easier to read, that's good. All right, so if you skip a line between your paragraphs, that's not a bad idea. Skipping every line, skipping a line between every text, I find is just a waste of space. A couple of other things about the sentences. Notice that we have one that is framed as a question. That's not a bad idea. That helps draw interest, helps create interest. Okay. Notice that none of them start with the same word. Okay. So if you're now, Now, again, you want to write that rough draft, just spit it out on paper as fast as you can. Okay, a rough draft should, in my opinion, should be rough. All right, no polishing. Just get your thoughts out there. What do you want to communicate? What did you find interesting about the book? Well, what do you think could have been explained better? What questions do you have, etc. Okay. Once you got that rough draft out there, the editing starts. All right, and the editing needs to be okay. What paragraph structure do I need to have? How's my introductory paragraph? Do I have a lot of I thought the book was interesting. I liked the quote on page 26. I thought the main character did the right thing. If you're always starting your sentences with the same word, that really should change. And try to make it less about you and more about the book. Okay. You're trying to convey information, you're not trying to express your feelings. Okay. So although that's appropriate in like your conclusion, whether you liked the book, whether you thought it was interesting. Okay. But that does not, I don't want to read the whole report and be like, oh, I like the book, it was well written, I found it refreshing. That's really not helpful. Okay, because why should I trust you? No offense, but seriously, if you just read a review like that on Amazon, that tells you almost nothing about whether this book would be worth your time, right? You want to know what the book is about, you want to know the period of history, perhaps. You want to pick up information, and your book report should be kind of like a summary. Okay, let's look at the second paragraph here. Just last year, I visited the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh. Aha. Okay, so the author is telling us relevant details about themselves. And again, he doesn't, or she, I'm not sure who, Brian Thomas. Okay, we assume it's a guy. Notice he doesn't say, I visited the Carnegie Museum of Natural History in Pittsburgh last year, because it's really easy to write a sentence like that, and it kind of sounds like you're making it all about you. Okay. No. He starts with just last year. All right. That's way better to say it that way. It may seem odd that humans care how you communicate your information, but they really, really do. All right. They really do. And if you've had my classes before, you probably picked up on, you know, sometimes Cartwright really nails it on the head, and it's just like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. And sometimes I'm trying to communicate something and it just doesn't. It may be true, but the way that I'm trying to explain it is just not working, right? Because it's for whatever reason. Maybe I got my brain all scrambled up. Maybe what I'm trying to say isn't all that relevant. I just think that it's relevant, like rain catchment systems. I'm obsessed with rain catchment systems, right? So the way that you convey your information is just as important as the information that you're conveying. All right. If you can't write well, people just assume you don't know what you're talking about. So it's a similar thing with grammatical and spelling errors, right? I assume you got spell check. Okay. Okay, so he's given information relevant as I entered the aha. He does not, again, he has a way of writing the sentence where it doesn't start with I, right? As I entered the fossil section, I didn't know whether to laugh or lament as I read the sign. Fossils are traces of prehistoric life that have no organic parts preserved. That's not true. Right? It's remarkable how silly the position of some scientists is. And again, I'm not trying to pick on them. They just haven't had any decent training. They don't know about this information. And how can they possibly have been? We have known about this, the fact that we find soft tissues preserved in many fossils since the 90s. It's been most of my lifetime that this information has been out. So how is it possible that we still have quotes like this at major museums in huge cities in the United States? Are they ignorant of the fact that we almost always find in well-preserved fossils, which are rare, but if you have a well-preserved fossil, you almost always find organic remains there? Are they ignorant, or are they trying to mislead the people who come through their museum? Such mistaken statements appear throughout popular science media. Yeah, they do. It's very common for people who are supposed to be experts in science to make basic scientific errors like that. Okay. It's no wonder few scientists know about or accept evidence of original tissue in fossils, and even fewer are looking for new evidence. Right. So who's doing this kind of research? Well, the original scientist, Mary Schweitzer, did it completely by accident. She discovered this. When she first discovered it, she redid the experiment almost 20 times, thinking that she had a mistaken result, that something had contaminated the fossils with blood and blood vessels. By the way, this is what a reptilian red blood cell looks like. It doesn't have the cute little dimple in it like mammalian ones do. Reptilian red blood cells still have their nucleus. Okay. Oh yeah, here we go. Mary Schweitzer and her team caught the world's attention. 2005. Okay, she'd been doing this kind of research for quite a while at this point. Described intact blood vessels, and red blood cells in a T-Rex bone. And she was absolutely vilified by many in the scientific community, who basically said that she was a scientist, a Christian who was pretending to be a scientist. She is a Christian, by the way, but she believes in evolution. Okay. Okay, so you notice things about 3 to 5 sentences. Everything's 3 to 5 sentences. You notice it never starts with the same word. And so, in other words, the structure of the sentence is different. You notice that it's fairly formal, right? There's not a lot of casual talk. There's not a lot of short sentences, which tend to be more common in casual conversation, right? So I just want to give you this as an example. When I'm trying to learn what it means to do public speaking really well, I listen to guys like Dr. Jordan Peterson, Voddie Baucham, R.C. Sproul, Martin Luther King Jr., some of the great public speakers of our time and in recent history. Okay. What made them great? How do they do this? How do they communicate their ideas? Okay. How do you become a great public speaker, right? Because that's what I'm trying to do in my classes, is I have to be able to communicate these ideas. Being able to write well is a great start. Okay. Again, Frank Peretti and his message on the chair. Now he really only has the one message, and it's a great message. As far as I can tell, I haven't seen a lot of other public speaking that he's done. But his message on the chair is perfect. Okay. Why? Because he wrote it out. He wrote it out, and he spent literally years perfecting it. Okay. So you don't have to spend years. You're just trying to communicate your information in a way that looks professional, that people would take seriously, because you've obviously invested time. You obviously know what you're doing. And again, looking at a professional who does this for a living can give you some excellent tips on how to write a great report. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. If you have any other questions, let me know. I'll try to get to those probably during class, because I think my email inbox is flooded at the moment. So the final draft will be due this week. If you need an extra week on it, I know many of you had trouble getting your book originally, and there's some communication troubles there. So if you need an extra week, I will certainly give that to you. All right. So I hope that's helpful, and have a great rest of your week.